Some of the biggest eagle news in centuries just broke. Here in the US, we all already know the bald eagle comeback story, from near extinction to thousands of birds flying high again. But across the ocean, there is another eagle, one you may not know about, one of the largest in the world, and one that was completely wiped out of England's skies for more than 200 years. And now in 2025, something has just happened that might finally rewrite this story. So let's rewind a couple hundred years and take a step back to 18th century England. Here, the roads are dirt, and most people live in tiny villages where life moves at the pace of a horse and a cart. Farmers are out in the fields, fishermen are hauling in nets along the coast, and smoke curls out from the fireplace chimneys in people's homes. And above it all, the sky is alive with giants. White-tailed eagles, Europe's largest bird of prey, sailing overhead with wings that can stretch 8 feet across. That's even bigger than the bald eagle, its American cousin. And in fact, these birds are so massive that it is common for birders to refer to them as flying barn doors, which I found hilarious. Not many birds can compete in size with the white-tailed eagle. There are a few other non-raptors in England that do come close in size. You've got cranes, mute swans, and even the great bustard, which conservationists reintroduced in modern times. But none of these have that same apex predator drama. I mean, come on, watching a bustard stomp across the ground just doesn't have the same effect as watching an eagle soar through the sky, right? No offense to the great bustard, of course. Without a doubt, there is something awesome, incredible, and so very alluring about a giant, beautiful bird of prey like this. But as we've learned on this channel, in nature, standing out isn't usually a good thing. Because the white-tailed eagle didn't just quietly fade away. In fact, they were pushed out by, guess who? Humans. Farmers and gamekeepers saw them as livestock thieves and shot them on sight. Victorian collectors climbed up cliffs to steal their massive eggs. And as wetlands were drained and forests were cleared, the habitats that they depended on vanished too. By the late 1700s, white-tailed eagle had completely vanished from southern England. Dorset, which was once one of their last strongholds, hasn't seen a chick since the 1780s. And just like that, the biggest eagle in Europe was erased from Britain's skies. Now, here comes the twist, because the white-tailed eagle didn't disappear from the whole world. While Britain was busy shooting, poisoning, and egg-collecting them into oblivion, healthy populations still soared over the fjords of Norway, across the coasts of Germany, and deep into Russia. These giants had been erased from Britain's skies, but thankfully not from the whole world yet. Fast forward to the 1970s, and conservationists in Scotland looked up into that empty sky and said, why not bring the eagles back? So they started ferrying young eagles from Norway, raising them and releasing them on the windswept cliffs of the Western Isles. But here's the thing, this wasn't just ambitious. In fact, it was a gamble, because they couldn't just move healthy adult eagles over to Scotland. Adult eagles would have just flown straight back to Norway. So only juveniles, who were still young enough to settle, gave the project a fighting chance. Except juvenile white-tailed eagles don't have a great track record. Young white-tailed eagles suffer from high mortality. Only about 30 to 40% of them even make it to breeding age. That means for every eagle released, there wasn't a very good chance that it would even survive long enough to find a mate, build a nest, and raise chicks. But fortunately, sometimes with good hard work and dedication, dreams do come true, and that is what happened in Scotland. Because slowly, the Scottish population began to rebuild. By the early 2000s, there were nesting pairs again on the coasts of Mull and Skye. The comeback had begun, but there was still a lot left to do. Then, in 2019, the story came at last to England. Forestry England and the Roy Dennis Wildlife Foundation launched a bold new plan to release a new generation of eagles onto the Isle of Wight, and hope they would reclaim England's skies after more than 2 centuries. Dozens of juvenile eagles were carefully flown in, tagged with GPS trackers, and then set free. And after their release, the eagles didn't just hang around the Isle of Wight. In fact, they roamed. Some flew straight across the English Channel. Others wandered inland. But here's the thing, white-tailed eagles don't even think about breeding until they reach the ripe old age of 5. So the whole project came with a giant caveat. We would all have to wait, and then wait some more. Years of wondering, would these eagles find each other? Would they stay? And could the largest eagle in Europe really make England home again? After some time, things weren't looking good because 3 of the eagles were unfortunately found dead, and 2 of them had allegedly been poisoned by illegal substances. Now, whether or not this was intentional, police were never able to determine. They actually closed the case as inconclusive. We didn't know whether the poisoning was accidental or intentional baiting. And this is important because not everyone, especially farmers and landowners, were thrilled about the eagles coming back. And so the deaths of these eagles definitely raised some eyebrows. Regardless of what happened though, things were looking grim for the white-tailed eagle. But fortunately, hope was on the horizon, and when 2023 rolled around, it brought with it much brighter skies. For years, it felt like we were holding our breath. Dozens of young eagles soaring around southern England, exploring, learning the landscape, but there hadn't been a single nest, not one chick. Then, in 2023, it finally happened. A pair of white-tailed eagles in southern England raised a chick, the first that the country had seen in over 200 years. And let me tell you, that chick wasn't just a little eaglet. It was history, in the form of a little tiny fluff ball. And in 2024, the miracle repeated, and 2 more chicks hatched. And then came 2025, this year, this month, when everything changed. Not 1, but 2 pairs successfully bred. There was one in Dorset and another in Sussex. This is especially exciting because Dorset hasn't seen a white-tailed eagle chick since the 1780s. I mean, that is before the word dinosaur even existed. That's crazy. And now a chick fledged there just a few days ago. Sussex went even further. A pair successfully raised and fledged 2 chicks, doubling down on the comeback. That makes 3 new fledglings this year, which is a big deal. It brings the number of successful fledglings to 6, but more importantly, it means something that conservationists have been dreaming of for decades. This isn't just one lucky pair of eagles breeding anymore. This is a population, and the plan is working. After more than 2 centuries, it's safe to say that the giants aren't just visiting England's skies. In fact, they are back to stay. So why am I calling this the biggest eagle news in centuries? Because that's a bold claim. So let's put it in perspective. In the US, we all know the bald eagle comeback story. Pesticides, hunting, and habitat loss nearly wiped them out. By the 1960s, there were fewer than 500 nesting pairs left in the lower 48. But thanks to the efforts of conservationists, the bald eagle made a roaring comeback. And today, there are over 300,000 eagles and 71,000 nesting pairs. An entire symbol of the nation was pulled back from the brink of extinction. Now that is amazing. And also, the story of the English eagle is pretty remarkable on its own, because this bird didn't just thin out in England. In fact, it disappeared completely, wiped from the landscape for more than 200 years. For generations, the only white-tailed eagles that Englishmen would see were in pictures and on pub signs. And now they're hatching chicks again, flying over farms, coasts, and villages, just like they did centuries ago. And to make this more amazing, it's important to note that this comeback isn't just about a bird. Apex predators like eagles shape entire ecosystems. They keep populations of fish, waterfowl, and even carrion in balance. In Denmark and Germany, scientists have showed that white-tailed eagles act like cleanup crews, feeding on sick or injured birds and carrion. This helps prevent the spread of disease and recycles nutrients back into the food chain. In other words, when you put the top predator back in place, the whole system gets healthier. And a fantastic example of this is actually in the wolves of Yellowstone National Park, which if you haven't heard the amazing story of that, I would definitely recommend checking out my video on the wolves of Yellowstone. But anyway, back to eagles, because there is something even bigger here too. We live in a time where extinction stories are everywhere. Species vanishing, habitat shrinking, bad news is piling up. But the white-tailed eagle coming back to England is a breath of fresh air. This is proof that with effort, patience, and a little bit of courage, we can bring back what was lost. And in a way that aligns with nature, not in a lab. So yes, to me, this is some of the biggest eagle news in centuries. Because it's not just about one chick or even 6 coming back. It's about rewriting the story of a nation's skies and showcasing the power that we have as humans to destroy, but also to protect. And who knows, maybe one day kids growing up in southern England won't think of white-tailed eagles as rare at all. They'll just look up, see a shadow crossing the fields, and say, oh yeah, there goes just another flying barn door. If you like this video, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below and check out my playlist all about eagles that you can see right here. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.